Hey guys, this episode of Scrambled covers the topics of abortion and pregnancy loss. We recognise this may be a sensitive topic for some of our listeners, therefore, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Scrambled, your space for fertility, owning your 30s, and the scramble that makes it all worth it. Today, we have a very, very special guest, someone I've known for the past 5 or so years at this point. She is the recent new wife of one of my good friends from college. So I've known your husband for, 15 years, I think, at this point, right?
Yeah,
we've
we're
been out of
getting
college
old.
for 10 years. Yeah, 14 years. And then you came into our world around 2020 timeframe. This is Sophia Bennet.
I know.
Bennett.
I've finally started saying Bennett, and it's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. I love it. And she lives out in LA, and she's here to share her story. She has kind of an interesting one around fertility and around starting to date your husband at the time and how it all went down. So we're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is my first podcast, so I'm very excited that.
Well, your family is
it's
very
yours.
experienced in podcasting. I know that much. So you'll be great.
Yes, definitely. This is exciting to be here. I've listened to your episodes, obviously, and the thing that I most connected with was like the need and want and intrinsic feeling that I want to be a mother at such a young age. My mom is a labor and delivery nurse, so I was aware of, the beauty of birth from a very young age, and it almost held this, I think for a lot of women, it's very scary when they first start talking about fertility and the actual act of giving birth. For me, it was just so normalized in my house, which is amazing because it has made this whole process so much easier.
And your mom also has a book.
She has a guide, which is, so she basically, right now, she's been a registered nurse for over 30 years. And in the past, I want to say she's been doing this her whole life, which is optimal positioning for birth. So she has a guide that she has women go through. I think she meets them at 28 weeks and then brings them to actual birth and it's basically getting the baby in the right position to deliver.
Amazing.
So she has an insane rate of success. She's avoiding C-sections, which have grown to be very high, especially in America. And she travels all over the country, teaching women, guiding women through the process.
I know she helped one of our very good mutual friends too.
Yeah, we're at the age.
We got that baby out naturally, vaginal birth.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So that's exciting. I mean, for me, as I said in previous episodes, I didn't really start thinking about this till I was even 29. So it's nice that you have that background. You grew up in that space. You have had very open conversations about it. And that brings us here today. You have a unique pregnancy story.
Yeah.
I will kind of just give you the floor and let you explain what happened.
Okay. So we can kind of go back to, I think like a lot of women, we were put on birth control at quite a young age. Mine was, I think I was 16, and I actually had expressed interest in getting on it because I wanted to be safe. And my mom took me to the hospital or took me to the OB. I got on the pill. I think I was on it for quite a while. I was not great at taking the pill.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. I think I remember oftentimes taking like 3 at once because I had missed 3 days, and then you would get so sick and it was just the worst cycle. Not great for, a young woman to be on. Senior year of college, I got on Nexplanon. I'm not sure if you're aware of, it's the arm implant.
Okay. Yep.
So it's like a small flexible rod inserted into your inner arm, and it slowly elicits progesterone into your body. I think at the initial stages, it releases a higher amount, and then throughout the 3 years that you're on it, slowly gets lower and lower. A lot of women who are on it end up having really bad reactions to it, mentally and anxiety related. I think now looking back at it, that's when my anxiety began, is when I first got it into my body. And the doctors, no one really connected those two things. I think because it was 2016 and it was quite new. But also I think, as we know, women's health sometimes is a bit foggy and things don't relate to each other immediately. I moved to New York in 2017 and ended up going to Maiden Lane Medical, which I believe still exists.
That's where I go.
Okay, yes. I love I mean,
them.
I love them. They do such a good job. So I had initially, I forget who her name was, but I had a doctor who, I was in a new life in New York. I just moved from Minnesota. I needed to go to an OB and find my place. She was like, "Why are you on such a high dose of this? You do not need to be on this thing that's potentially causing you, mental strife." So in 2019, she removed it and I went and got the IUD. I got the Liletta, which is the hormonal intrauterine device. It's not the copper IUD. And everything went fine. I mean, the insertion is like a little bit painful, but again, I wanted something that I didn't have to think about, that I wasn't taking multiple at a time and getting sick. It was less hormones than Nexplanon, so I felt confident that I wasn't going to have super bad reaction to it. And I just learned that it's actually currently approved by the FDA for up to 8 years of pregnancy prevention, which is amazing for so many women who, want that safety in their life. And it's more than 99% effective. I looked up these stats because I was quite interested.
Here we go.
Its failure rate can increase over time, but literally by like 0.5%. And according to the internet, I was part of the 0.3 group that reported a pregnancy, which is 1 in 200 to 333 people.
Oh my gosh. So you're less than the 1%. You're in the 0.3%
Yes.
of women who got pregnant with a hormonal IUD.
Yes.
How long into having an IUD did you get pregnant?
So I got it in 2019. So this was 3 years, which kind of connects to the story of how I realized that I was pregnant. I was sitting in a salon chair, a hair salon,
Okay.
on my phone, as we are.
Very usual.
And it was the month before my sister's wedding. And, everything is quite stressful at the time. I was the maid of honor, lots of things going on in the ether, trying to keep everything organized. And I was looking at my calendar, and for some reason, I had this instinct to check when I had gotten my IUD put in. It's like, I feel like it's been a while. And at that time, I was under the impression that mine expired within 3 years. Now, looking back at it, she was like, it would have at least lasted 5 years. So this was not the case. But for some reason, I had the instinct to check my calendar.
The universe told you something.
The universe was looking out for me. And I should mention that when I was on the IUD, I was not getting my period. So there was no indication from there that I was pregnant.
Sorry, quick question. At this time, you were dating Alex?
Yes, we had been dating for 5 months at this point.
Okay. What a fun conversation.
Yes. So I immediately texted him saying, hey.
What happened? Wait, after you were like 3 years, I think it might be expired. You were sitting in the chair. Then what?
Then I texted him that. I was like, I think that my IUD maybe have expired. And at this point, we were not using condoms. We were just relying on the IUD.
Yep.
Of course, like as people do.
It's 99 point plus effective.
Yes. And we were exclusive. We were very serious. Honestly, at the point, we were pretty much decided that we were going to be together.
Yep.
And I texted him saying that I was going to pick up a pregnancy test on the way home. At this point, I was living in like a small, tiny East Village apartment with our friend Gabby.
Did you feel any symptoms, or this is purely out of, I wonder if my IUD is expired, I should check?
This was pure feeling. I mean, looking back and examining how I was feeling at the time, I had like gained some weight, but this was quite early on in the pregnancy. And I think that was also due probably to not the most optimal lifestyle that I was living. I was working a very stressful job. My cortisol levels were so high. I was going out a lot. We were, living our 20s in New York. It was the best.
Eating.
Exactly.
Yes.
No rules at all. And my boobs were huge. My breasts had increased But I have always had like a larger chest, I thought. And that was the only indication that I'm like, that's so weird that this is happening. But I just thought it was maybe a weight fluctuation. As women, we have quite a lot of those, I think, depending on the stage of your life and depending how you're treating your body, which, as I mentioned, wasn't great at the time. I went to CVS, got the pregnancy test, went home, and it came back positive. I think when there is a surprising, or maybe in this case, unwanted pregnancy, the first pregnancy that test that comes back positive, you're like, there's no way. That's a fluke. So I had Alex go pick up another test. We took the second one together. And when that came back positive, we sat down. And I mean, you know, Alex, he's like the most respective, has the best heart, has a very strong mother who has made or encouraged, also just led a life that, you know, he respects women in such a way that that's really what drew me to him. So we had the conversation, and at this point, I do want to say that, like, especially listening to your initial podcasts and being in the place that I am now, I want to be sensitive to the fact that a lot of our friends are going through this time of our lives where it is hard to get pregnant. And you did mention that, like, we live the first half of our lives, more than the half of our lives, trying to avoid pregnancy, right? And doing everything in our power not to. And at this stage of my life, I was still in that. Looking back at it, I should have not had a child at 28. I was living a very stressful life.
You were also in a brand new 5-month relationship. I mean,
right.
And that's
right.
the father of your child. You just don't know at that point.
Right. Exactly. And I think also everyone is on their own journey, and this was mine. And I am very confident in my decision. And I immediately knew what I wanted to do. And that was to get an abortion. And thankfully, I have so many people in my corner that were behind me. So at this point, I had no idea that anything could be wrong. It was just, okay, let's actually go to my sister's wedding, which I had to leave the next day for. And then when we come back from Texas, she was getting married in Austin, we will handle this together. And that's exactly what we did. So I went to my sister's wedding. It was, you know, the best week ever. I think looking back at it, I was quite in another world. I think my body also knew, I mean, throughout this whole process, I think the biggest takeaway for my own self was how in tune I am with my own body, and knowing that I had to take this pregnancy test when there was really no indication besides that I thought that my IUD had expired. So I do think I was carrying a lot that week of being scared of the unknown. And again, like being in this new experience with, of course, I didn't want anyone in my family to be taken out of this joyful week of my sister's. So I did this kind of alone. On the last day before we left, I did tell my sister, and she was, of course, so supportive and was there for me through everything. So now we're back in New York. Alex and I went again to Maiden Lane Medical. I do want to shout out my doctor. Her name is Dr. Armina Iana, and she was incredible throughout this whole process. My mom actually wrote her a thank you card after all of this because she was just so calm and factual and empathetic throughout the whole thing. I went in to go get a pregnancy confirmation, and she did I believe it was an outer utero ultrasound. I think that they just don't have the tools at the clinic to do an in utero ultrasound. And she noted that she couldn't locate the cells, which I appreciated her terminology at that point, because I had noted that it was unplanned and unwanted. She was very sweet, and she said that she could not find the cells in the uterus and that there was a high chance that I was experiencing an ectopic pregnancy, and that I immediately needed to go to the ER to get that confirmed. At that point, I had no idea what an ectopic pregnancy was. I think that now, I'm much more aware. I also have a few friends who have gone through the same thing since.
Wow.
And by definition, an ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus, most commonly in a fallopian tube. Oftentimes, they don't know where the embryo is because they can't get a read on it until they go laparoscopically inside your body.
Wow.
So oftentimes it's just kind of out there. They don't really know until they go in. So because the uterus is the only place where a pregnancy can safely grow, an ectopic pregnancy cannot continue normally and must be, apprehended, requires immediate medical treatment.
In a normal pregnancy, obviously, an embryo implants into the uterus. It grows in the uterus. That's how a baby is made. Just,
Yep.
for dumbing it
Yeah.
down. An ectopic pregnancy is anywhere outside the uterus. It could be attached to the outside of the uterus. It could be in a fallopian tube. It can, I'm sure there's a bunch of places it could be, but
Yep.
it can be, from what I know, it can be very dangerous for you as the mother to grow that. You can't, because number one, the baby, I think, won't grow correctly there. And number two, it can kill you.
Yes, it's not viable as a pregnancy. And what she explained, she equated the fallopian tube as like a paper straw, how fragile those can be. And if the embryo grows to be, more than a certain amount of millimeters in length or size, it can burst and you could bleed out. So this was a lot. And Alex was in the waiting room, and I don't even remember what I said to him besides, we got to go to the ER. And I'm sure that this was super frightening. He had the wherewithal not to dig deeper because he knew what state I was in, but he was there for me every step of the way. So we went downtown to the ER. I don't know if you've been to the downtown New York emergency room in New York Presbyterian, but it's not the most pleasant place in the world.
No, I haven't been to that one.
Very stressful, very high stress. The doctors are amazing and, they work so hard, but the environment is not the most friendly. And it's very confusing when I wasn't on my phone looking up what an ectopic pregnancy was. I wasn't, doing any research. I was just trying to get to the next place.
Yeah, fight or flight.
Exactly. And at this point, I called my mom and told her what the situation was. She had no idea any of this. I hadn't told her I was pregnant.
Oh, you hadn't told your mom anything? Only your sister?
I hadn't told her. Yep, I hadn't told her I was pregnant. So at this time, I told my mom I was pregnant. And there is a funny dichotomy of it all, of having a mom who's a registered nurse and knowing so much about birth and how incredibly beautiful it is, and where I was then, which is on my way to terminate a pregnancy. And I'm so lucky to have parents who I know fully support me in this decision, but I did still feel like a level of shame. And I think a lot of women carry that in every aspect of fertility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most important thing for me after this whole conversation is just talking about it. Whatever that may be, whatever your story is giving that a platform. And that might not necessarily be a podcast, but that could be a conversation with a friend. Is we need to remove the shame from these conversations, because if we don't talk about it, we don't know that there's, other people that could have been in this position.
I remember after this happened and you made your Instagram post just addressing everything, and it went pretty viral.
Yeah.
I was just so inspired by it. And I thought of you immediately when I was starting this podcast, because I was like, there's so many different avenues of fertility. There's so many different emotions that go through it. It's something that everyone needs to talk about. And you even said, multiple friends who have now gone through ectopic pregnancies. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. And to be in it together with people just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it really does.
Yes. So once we got to the ER, they did confirm it was an ectopic pregnancy, and I believe that they assumed without proving that it was in the left fallopian tube. So the process for an ectopic pregnancy is getting a drug called methotrexate, which is actually used on cancer patients. So this drug works by stopping the growth of rapidly dividing cells, effectively ending the pregnancy. So they use in cancer treatment to prevent cancer cells from dividing and growing and conquering the body.
Is this different than a typical abortion medication?
So there's another one, mifepristone or misoprostol. So those have been in the ether a lot. I think those are what the current administration is trying to ban. Methotrexate, I don't know if that's just a generic term for one of these, but that has not been, maybe because it's attached to cancer treatment, but it was a dose that I received. You get one shot and then they test your HCG levels, your pregnancy levels, and continue to do that as it happens. Typically, I believe they say that most people only require one dose of methotrexate. And so that was the current plan, was getting this shot, checking my levels, and seeing where we go from there. In my case, when I was checked 2 days later, and then another 3 days later, my HCG levels continued to rise. And I think there's usually an initial growth in HCG levels before the drug starts working. But in my case, it was growing at too rapid of a speed for them to say that it was working. So I got a second dose of methotrexate and continued to get my blood drawn every 2 to 3 days.
Were there any side effects of this medication? Were you sick at all, bleeding? Well, I guess no, because it wasn't working.
Yeah, I was no bleeding. I think I was a little bit sick, but I was still, it's so funny. I was still going to work, still showing.
Oh, so you weren't staying in the hospital during all of this? You were
No, thankfully. So I think I was a total of 7 appointments in 12 days. And usually it's shorter. Again, most people don't have to get 2 doses. Mine was lengthened. And throughout this process, there was you couldn't work out. You couldn't do any, rigorous activity because they don't want your cells to, or the embryo to burst in your fallopian tube. So
it's literally like egg freezing. Like you can't work out for 2 weeks because they don't want to hurt your ovaries.
Yep. And in that time, as mentioned before, I was in a stressful job, but I think having that something to go to every day and take your mind off of everything. And again, my doctor was so wonderful. She was checking in on me. I felt like I had a team behind me that I could rely on, but also at the time was going through it pretty silently. I think I had told my core group of friends, my support system, but was kind of doing it with Alex and I together.
That's something also you are processing, and you probably later want to decide, is this something I want to share? Is it not? Like you didn't know how you were feeling in the moment. You were on adrenaline. You were just like, totally. I'm doing what I'm told to do from the medical professionals.
Yep. In complete survival mode.
Yes.
After the 7th appointment, based on my current blood levels, my doctor called me and let me know that I was going to have to go into surgery, which I always knew was an option, but was honestly trying to avoid. I never needed surgery before. I think I didn't even go under when I got my wisdom teeth taken out. Like,
really?
No. Like, this was a complete foreign experience to me. I had been in the hospital like one other time in my life and was a little scared, obviously.
Yeah.
And being in New York, my parents are still in Minnesota at the time. I really had Alex, and we had told his mom at this point, so she was there for me too, which was amazing. But she had lived upstate at the time, and Alex had actually gone on a work trip. So he was not in New York when I got this call, and he answered the phone, got on a flight so quickly that he literally lost his wallet.
Oh, no.
On the way home. So when I got the call, I told my, boss that I had to go. She knew what was happening at the time. So thankfully I had her on my side as well. But I went in the hospital alone.
Did they call you and say this is an emergency, come in immediately, or did you get scheduled?
It was emergent. So she said, go home, get in a cozy outfit, come to the hospital as soon as you can, and we'll take care of it. That whole process, I think going back on it, was very scary. Sitting in the waiting room, you're in a robe, very aware of your surroundings. The nurse came in and she was like, "Can we leave your bag with anyone?" And at that point, Alex had not arrived. And I was like, "Can you just bring it into the room with me?" And he actually got to the hospital as I was being wheeled into the operating room. And this was still, 2021, or 2022. So people were still wearing masks at the hospital.
Yep.
So they had to do a whole check for him, I think, when he walked in, which was preventing him from getting to me, quickly. And I was like, we were both like, had our arms outstretched. I didn't even see him. The sweet nurse ended up giving my bag straight to him. So I knew he was going to be waiting for me on the other side. And it's funny, the body carries a sort of trauma response, I think, to situations like this. And before going under, I remember shaking so violently, just having this like physical reaction to the fear, being alone, being kind of unaware of what I was going into. And to this day, when I mean, even having this conversation, when I talk about this, I get the shakes.
Yeah.
And
I'm emotional right now.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
It's heavy and it's scary, and you being at someone else's mercy for your own body is very tough. And I think that presents itself in a lot of different instances throughout fertility. Also, the parts where things are, again, muddy or foggy, or you're just trying to survive. And I was telling Alyssa earlier, all the doctor's reports I didn't even read, or if I did, I didn't remember any of the information, because you're just trying to move to the next thing. And during the surgery, I received a laparoscopic left salpingectomy, which is they removed my left fallopian tube. They also removed my IUD, which appeared bent but intact, as well as a peritubal cyst from the right indexa. So going back to that, the left fallopian tube was removed. That's where they identified the embryo.
So they couldn't get the embryo out without removing your entire fallopian tube?
No, and what I understood actually going into the surgery was they would prefer to just remove the fallopian tube, because here, I'll read the statistics. After one ectopic pregnancy, the risk of occurrence rises to roughly 5 to 10% in most cases, depending on individual factors, including damage to the fallopian tubes. But interestingly enough, when the tube is fully removed, you are in less danger of it happening again, because if the affected tube is left with scar tissue, it's more likely to cause another ectopic, because it can get stuck in the scar tissue. That makes a lot of sense.
That's interesting. So you're better off without the left and only giving the right one a chance.
Exactly. And then going back to the IUD, which, as they said, appeared bent but intact. I remember them saying that. She was like, it was, it looks like a T, but it had, the base of it was crooked. And this could be from so many different factors, including insertion. Things can get messed up during insertion. It can also get messed up during period cramps, or just, normal factors moving throughout the body. So that was interesting. But she said it would have never knocked its ability to work.
Okay.
Having it bent.
Okay.
And then they did remove a cyst on my right indexa, which is just, right tissue in my body. And I have never had issues with cysts, but she said they just removed it just, to be safe. After all of that, emotionally, I did feel like I suffered a loss, not understanding the statistics of, it being better off removed. There was still something that was taken from my body.
Yeah.
Especially it being something that helps your reproductive system being taken from my body, and then going back to the beginning of our conversation of, everything in my life has led me, hopefully, to being a mother.
Yes.
And that's my end goal. Regardless of everything, that's all I've ever wanted, is to be a mom. And having something removed from my body that, makes this beautiful process work was very sad. And I think that's something that I took with me for a while and had to process, which was tough, but also speaking out loud about it and having the support system and also learning the science behind it all.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to my next point, which is so fascinating, is that our bodies can adjust when a fallopian tube is removed. So to get in this to the science, fallopian tubes act as a catcher to the egg. They're not actually connected to the ovary. If the ovary on the same side isn't releasing an egg, the tube can sometimes reach across the pelvic cavity to pick up an egg from the opposite ovary.
Our bodies are insane. It's going diagonal. That is insane.
So the process isn't guaranteed every cycle, but it happens often enough that women with one tube can still conceive from either ovary.
How amazing is that?
It's so amazing. And during my discharge appointment, she did mention this, and she was like, it's not going to be, this big thing that you think it's going to be. It's not going to prevent you from getting pregnant. It's not going to prevent you from getting pregnant naturally, which, I'm open to every facet of getting pregnant, but this felt like a little bit of a win.
Yep.
Throughout the whole process.
Yeah. Of course, everyone wants to be pregnant naturally first.
Right.
I mean, that's Mother Nature, number one. And number two, no one wants to do injections.
Exactly.
But you do what you have to do.
We do what we have to do. You're totally right. So that was fascinating and incredible. And again, felt like a win throughout the whole thing. And also learning more about your body. I mean, I think if given the opportunity, take a second and learn about your own system, learn about the general system. I think we get taught this once in 6th grade, and it's health where you're embarrassed because you're sitting next to your crush and you're like, I'm not paying attention to this. Learning about it all and understanding your own systems. And I recently got on maybe for the past few years have gotten on a pregnancy tracker for ovulation and just a period tracker, basically, to figure out when I'm getting my period.
Assuming you never went back on birth control.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Since they took the IUD out, I was like, I'm not going to get another one. This is also at the point where I know Alex and I are going to spend the rest of our lives together. I mean, this experience alone was the biggest indication of having a partner that I want to spend the rest of my life with. We were dealt a few crazy cards in the first 6 months of our relationship, and it was just so easy to walk out of it all with someone else. And so, yes, we don't really need birth control or a form of birth control that I had been on already. So I did not go back on birth control, but also being more attached to my period has been amazing. I think I can absolutely predict when I'm ovulating, even without the app now. I just know my body. I know I get anxious and annoyed, a few days after or before my period. That week, I'm like, P.S., just, take everything in stride, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Don't get sensitive when I lash out. And it's been amazing to really recognize what's going on in your body and then mentally clock it. I think it just makes me feel really connected to my body. And I don't know if that would have happened necessarily without this experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is a lot to digest. I mean, I knew your story, and still hearing it step by step like this is just so crazy, so sad, so inspiring. You're so strong for going through all of this. And I mean, as we said before, being able to share this story can help so many other people, so many other women, I don't know, men, people in relationships who struggle with all different aspects of fertility. So I really appreciate you coming on and speaking about it, because it's so inspiring. You're amazing. You're amazing. And I'm happy you're okay. And I'm glad your right fallopian tube can go diagonal and catch an embryo.
I mean, we need, as your co-host says, we need a doctor on to fact check this and not fact check, but elaborate, because it's so incredibly fascinating what the body can do.
I mean, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's like,
Yeah.
it's not regrowth of the left fallopian tube, but it's regrowth in a different way.
Yes. It's like, oh, you're missing something, so we're gonna, find a workaround, which is incredible.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Oh my gosh. Well, you are so special. Alex is so special. I've known that way before I knew you. So I'm so happy you have him. I'm happy, you went through that together, and I appreciate you being on today and sharing.
Thank you. And I do want to just say one other thing is 2 months after, so this was April. So 2 months after was June 2022, which is when Dobbs was passed, which was the turnover of Roe v. Wade. And the reason I shared my story on Instagram was because women were being turned away that month at hospitals when they were having issues in pregnancy, specifically ectopic pregnancies. I remember reading a headline of a woman in Texas who was turned away and had forever damage of her reproductive system and a near-death experience because the doctors were unsure of the rules at that time. And at the end of the day, my health was so prioritized. It was, the number one priority when I went into that hospital, and I never doubted that. And we need to work to get back to that point where every woman's health is priority.
Yes.
100%
and agree.
That was a huge takeaway when I posted was there were so many people that responded that said they had gone through similar experiences. And again, we are, living in an uncertain world, and we can all be strong together and fight for our rights.
Yeah. We as women go through more than probably most creatures on this earth. We really do. So we all have to stick together.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Alyssa. This was amazing, and for giving me a platform to talk about it.